At the end of World War II, Dwight Eisenhower wisely ordered camera crews to capture evidence of the Holocaust. Otherwise, he warned, over time, these atrocities would not be believed. But while the Cold War was won, there was no Reams Schoolhouse or Battleship Missouri moments capturing the defeat of communism, complete with documentaries and trials convicting them of their crimes against humanity. The Soviet gulags are largely paved over by roads and shopping malls. The Cultural Revolution in Mao's China between 1966 and 1976 is probably the greatest human tragedy, causing more pain, suffering, and terror than has ever been inflicted upon human beings in the long history of people. Yet, there is very little visual evidence of it. The curious and the academic can seek out books on it and read of its descriptions complete with statistics, but Ike was right. Without the cameras, it has come to be unbelieved. Certainly the Western left does not wish to point it out and would totally disagree that somehow the choices in politics they have adopted spring in any way from these horrors. Yet the founders of communism were once nice liberals, as they think of themselves. Pol Pot was just an intellectual school teacher studying Marxism in France. When he became by historical accident the leader of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, he presided over the death of 1.5 million people in a country with a small population. Liberals, left to their own devices, are capable of such horrors. Conservatives, left to their own devices, will write the American Constitution. Belief in God means one knows all they do and believe in their heart is known and judged by God, who they fear. Absent faith, the atheist will believe anything. Thus can Charles Darwin's theory of evolution morph into a theory that some people are inherently superior to others, that it is humane to end the lives of the lame, the homosexual, the colored, and the undesirable before they are allowed the breath of life. This is what leads to the gas chambers, the gulags, and Planned Parenthood. Ultimately, it is why millions of American blacks live in abject poverty and violence, because this condition serves the most base, Machiavellian, never-ending purposes of the Democrat Party, the protectors of the victim class. It is a cosmic joke of satanic proportions. How else to explain the blacklist and McCarthyism? In essence, the communists did infiltrate Hollywood. Alger Hiss was a Soviet spy. U.S. Senator Joseph McCarthy, Republican from Wisconsin, did not realize how right he was when he uncovered a conspiracy so immense. Yet the news media and the public schools have effectively managed to convince the dumb and the dumber that it was all a witch hunt. In the meantime, they have attempted to paint the Republican Party as Nazis, even though Republican Nazis have not been discovered walking around on the earth. The tactics of Saul Alinsky became the tactics of the Democrat Party, not to mention the tactics of the Church of Scientology. The Communist Party financed the anti-war protests of the Vietnam era. The left took ownership of the victimhood business, from civil rights to feminism to gay rights to the environment. But this was all during the Cold War. The communists had a national interest in disrupting or discrediting America. Soviet espionage may have reached its peak during the Reagan 80s. But the fall of the Berlin Wall revealed over time a new dynamic that perhaps can best be described as a fiction come to reveal itself as truth. Take Hollywood, for instance. Despite being wildly liberal, on occasion the entertainment industry engages in random acts of truths that are too real for their own good. Take Patton, Apocalypse Now, and A Few Good Men as examples. Patton screenwriter Francis Ford Coppola wrote the movie as an anti-war screed meant to portray General George S. Patton as an unhinged military kook who needed to be reined in by civilians. Instead, George C. Scott infused the role with so much charisma that it is viewed as one of the great patriotic war films. In Apocalypse Now, Coppola tried again, but the helicopter attack sequences and equally charismatic performances of Robert Duvall as Colonel Kilgore again make this a must-see among military buffs, officer candidates, and boot camp war jockeys. Then there is A Few Good Men, a cautionary tale of military power run amok by liberal screenwriter Alan Sorkin and director Rob Reiner. Instead, Jack Nicholson's courtroom diatribe is viewed as the essence of military forthrightness. Its message that civilians are far wiser than war heroes is largely lost among the warrior class, who recite Lieutenant Colonel Nathan Jessup's famed "You can't handle the truth" dialogue. But way more to the point of fiction, telling the truth, are other works out of Hollywood. No Way Out, 1987, featured Kevin Costner as a military hero who is positioned in a high place at the Pentagon. We eventually discover he is a Soviet mole, born and raised to infiltrate American society from within. This was not a fantasy. It was a real program. A similar movie called Little Nikita played to this theme. More recently, the TV show The Americans demonstrates this scenario during the 1980s. Homeland featured a Marine hero cultivated by Al-Qaeda, who manages to be in a position to blow up the vice president and many top political figures. This show apparently became too real for its own good. Its audience became largely conservative, who felt the depictions of enemies within America closely mirrored President Barack Obama. Like 24, it held nothing back. Islamic Jihad was at war with us everywhere in the world. Conservative talk radio host Dr. Michael Savage so profusely praised the accuracy of the show and its tacit condemnation of Obama's failures to keep America safe, that in 2017 they decided to switch the theme of its main character, Claire Danes' Carrie Matheson, from a CIA agent battling bad guys to, at least in the first few episodes, a liberal ACLU type defending them against unfair prejudice against Muslims. In these early episodes, this led the show to look weak, uninteresting, and probably in its last season, although it eventually got more interesting as the program went on. As for Obama, he has had the effect of consolidating once and for all what this strange new post-Cold War enemy is. There are conspiracy theories regarding who and what he is. Aside from the birther issue, which despite liberal talking points never really was settled as an absolute, there is the Obama as Yuri theory, following the script of No Way Out. In short, this theory holds that Obama's father, mother, probably grandparents, were either CIA agents, KGB moles, or both, and or plants of the Muslim Brotherhood. What is not in dispute is that from the age of 5 to the age of 9, Obama attended a Muslim madrasa in Indonesia. One possibility as to why he was placed in such a school is that, if it were necessary, he developed antipathy, even hatred towards America. Life in the U.S., where he might become a baseball fan, a Dallas Cowboys supporter, or, God forbid, a Christian, would be too risky. Where better to learn to hate America than a Muslim madrasa? Of course, this is followed by 9 years of indoctrination from the man some say was his real father, the communist Frank Marshall Davis, who, if America had gone to war with the Soviets during this time, would have been swept up as one of the early suspects of communist activity. Then there is Bill Ayers, whose ability, along with his wife, to freely walk around in America belies the general theory that people who attempt to blow up police departments in the Pentagon are supposed to be locked up. Ayers, as violently anti-American a human being as has been produced, was, by natural construct, a man of political influence in liberal Chicago, and thus decided, or perhaps the KGB decided for him, that Obama was the future. Thus, with Ayers' help, Obama launched his political campaign. A hidden hand seemed to propel him all the way beyond that. And the rest is history. But this thesis is not an indictment of Obama, or accusation that he had Muslim masters, or that Russia, led by a former KGB man who, if Obama was a mole, would have been his handler to one degree or another. Everything Vladimir Putin could have asked for has happened in the Obama years. Rather, it is an attempt to identify this new breed of communism, for lack of a better word, since the Soviet Union dissolved. Obama and the great majority of the Democrat Party are people who have chosen anti-Americanism as their politics. There was a time when our enemies needed to bribe, blackmail, or cajole American spies into doing their work. Today, the American left freely commits acts of treason benefiting our enemies, namely Islamic Jihad. They do it without anybody asking them to do it. Whoever or whatever entity, whether manly or an evil spirit, that has managed to see this despairing set of circumstances come to fruition might be the greatest political extortionist in history. It has been so subversive, so devastating to America, that it appears only the hand of devil could achieve such a feat. Therefore, perhaps, only the hand of God can defeat them. Is it possible that an arrogant, lying, narcissistic egomaniac, white businessman, was chosen by God himself to propel this victory over evil? The Bible tells us that such incongruous things are not really possible, but have happened many times. The Jews were grave sinners, stiff-necked people who defied God time and time again, only to be favored by him until his will was done. Their great King David was a sinful adulterer who placed the husband of his lover onto the battlefield where he would surely die just so he could carry on his affair. Yet he was a servant of God, a spiritual man of faith who led the Jewish people to great victories. Jesus used sinners, prostitutes, adulterers, tax collectors, and murderers to do his will. We are not sure if Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. She might have been. But a woman named Mary was an adulteress who was saved by Jesus and taught the world mercy, not to mention a new set of biblical laws replacing the Old Testament. Saul of Tarsus literally persecuted and murdered Christians, yet was converted by Christ and becoming St. Paul the Apostle.